and gentlemen, welcome in. It is Tuesday, which means it is waiver day, the first waiver day of the year, and how exciting. This is usually the time of year where people are like, oh, I can get in on some, some values that I didn't get to snag in the draft. Now I get to just grab them on a waiver cost. Something a little bit less underneath of what you had to pay for in the draft. Now you get to kind of have a little bit of data from the first week. You can grab somebody from the waiver wire that cost you maybe just a waiver pick and that you can play for the next few weeks. So we got a big show. We got to cover the Sunday night game as well as the Monday night game because we haven't seen you since Monday morning. So we got all that. We got some trade targets for you, some waiver targets, and some people to look for tomorrow when it comes to free agency and who's dropping everything and stuff like that. Because obviously when you have players that you got to pick up, players have to be dropped, so players in your league that should not be dropped will be dropped, and we will be talking about those a little later on. So, let's see. Latavius Murray just got signed to the Saints practice squad. That means nothing. So moving on to the waiver show because we have a lot today. So first I'm going to kick it off with the injury updates because we have so many. So just in case you've been living under a rock or want a quick synopsis on what everything is going on in the NFL when it comes to injuries, let us roll right on into that. So first on injury updates, we have George Kittle. He is hopeful to practice tomorrow on Wednesday, so just about the same boat that you were in previously when talking about George Kittle going into the week, where if he's active, you play him, but you have to err on the side of caution. Maybe you have to pick up somebody on waivers this week because you were streaming last week. We'll talk about the tight end waivers that you can grab, but make sure that you're keeping an eye out for George Kittle and seeing what happens with him because you're gonna need something to kind of have insurance with George Kittle for throughout basically the duration of the season. You know what you bought in George Kittle, you know what you got, so make sure you have some insurance waiting on the bench for you. Next up, we got T. Higgins. He is currently day-to-day with the concussion. The team is optimistic about T. Higgins, but he is day-to-day, so you need to monitor that. I do believe that he will play, but I am not the team doctor, so it is not up to me. Speaking of not up to me, we're talking about Najee Harris. Now, Coach Tomlin said that he is optimistic that Najee Harris will be okay after negative x-rays. You have to monitor that if you are the Najee Harris manager. But Najee says that he will play, so that's where I'm coming from, where I say it is not up to him. Najee came out, said I will play, so all the fantasy managers who have Najee are like, oh, he's good to go then. That's not what that means. And they're playing New England, so you're not even sure if he's going to see the full allotment of snaps in that game. So be very wary if you are a Najee Harris manager such as myself. Err on the side of caution. If he's active, you are starting him, but beware because he might not get the full snap count. Moving on to the next one, the big one this week is Elijah Mitchell. He has a sprained MCL, so he is out guaranteed at least 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to say guaranteed 8 weeks, what I think. So the MCL sprain, two-month injury just about, so 8 weeks probably for Elijah Mitchell. We will talk about the big waiver ad off of that. In the waiver section, next up, we got Chris Godwin. Now, Chris Godwin has a sprained hamstring, and I'd prepare for him to be out 2 to 3 weeks. Now, they could be even one game, but from what I know on this team and the way that they move, it's probably going to be at least a 2-week injury for Chris Godwin. They don't need him to come back absolutely immediately. They're not going to force him back from injury, so I do believe that Chris Godwin is out a minimum of 2 weeks. So prepare for that if you are the Chris Godwin manager. Keenan Allen also will not play Thursday, but she shouldn't be more than 2 weeks because he has the long week. He has the short week that he's coming off of this week with the hamstring. So definitely not going to play this week, but he has the long week to recover, so I do believe that he's not going to miss 2 weeks. He will only miss the 1 week, so you can hang on to Keenan Allen and, kind of figure that he'll be back. You just have to find a spot start for him this week, which I'm sure you have because you drafted deep. Moving on to the next one, we are talking about Alvin Kamara. He was limited in touches due to a rib injury. Now, the team says he feels better, but I would be monitoring this, making sure that you have something on the other side, maybe even trying to facilitate a trade, because if Alvin Rib's injury was kind of undisclosed and now it's coming up now, I would be very worried if I was an Alvin Kamara manager. So, he's in our trade section. We'll talk about him a little bit, but if you can kind of get away from that situation, I absolutely would, especially with Alvin Kamara this year. We see a little bit more passing than we thought we were going to see with Jameis Winston and the Saints. So for me personally, when I'm looking at Alvin Kamara, he is somebody on my team that I paid a high draft price for that I could trade away and still get some decent capital in return. 49ers are signing Marlon Mack. Fantastic. That means nothing. So Dak, next one up. We're talking about Dak Prescott. We will talk about that in this section because we have to talk about Tampa Bay and Dallas, the Sunday night game, because we didn't get a chance to talk about it. We've been gone since Monday, but oh my God, Dallas. What a train wreck. Absolutely no rhythm from Dallas. And we expected the rushing game of Zeke to, be non-existent. We expected Pollard a little bit in the passing game. Didn't get that. We expected a lot out of CD. Didn't get that. So Tampa Bay really took away just about everything from Dallas. When I went back and watched that game, CD had no chance all night, and the whole team basically was in shambles once CD was taken away. Dak didn't know what to do, and then Dak goes and breaks his hand and messes up his thumb, so now Dak has to have surgery. He is out 6 weeks, we'll say. And we'll keep that monitor as we go, but we'll say 6 weeks to be safe. Cooper Rush will ascend to the throne as the quarterback one over there, so he won't have amazing value, but I wouldn't panic on CD and Schultz. I do believe that there is a chance and probably a really good, likelihood that Cooper Rush hyper targets them, and there is going to be easier games than the ones that they had in this one. Tampa Bay was a stout defense against them. They were really playing them very, very well. So Tampa Bay hungry to get this win. They got it. They were looking good. The run game looks very, very strong in Leonard Fournette. Tampa Bay loses Godwin early to the hamstring, and he will miss the few weeks, so now's the time to grab Gage, or if you can go and trade for Julio, something like that. We saw a lot more Julio than we expected, so that is really great. If you are the Julio manager, somebody that took the chance on Julio, I do believe that you can run that, kind of going forward as far as, putting him in your wide receiver 3 flex spot and get some appeal out of him. But I wouldn't panic on CD and Schultz and those two over there. Pollard, I wouldn't drop just yet. A lot of people asking me if they would drop Pollard. I would not drop Pollard just yet. I would wait a week to see what happens over there with Cooper Rush, because Cooper Rush isn't just completely incompetent. He can make some things happen. Obviously, it's not the same ceiling that you had when Dak was there, but Cooper Rush isn't absolutely incompetent. There are much worse backup quarterbacks than Cooper Rush, and he's been there, so they can make do with Cooper Rush is what we'll call it. Make do. Moving on to Denver at Seattle. Russ and the Broncos falling just short after what is probably the worst time management that we've seen in recent memory. Denver absolutely just blew 30 seconds of clock for no reason, just to call a timeout, and it was actually pretty admirable how bad they were. Like, how do you become that bad after playing football for so long? I saw one tweet, I can't remember who it was, but he was so angry, basically saying, like, how do football head coaches not have the clock management that 15-year-olds in Madden have? I thought that was hilarious, because it's so true that you have 3 timeouts, you have Russell Wilson, you have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, you can move the ball, you've been having amazing success, but if you can just get a little bit closer, who cares if you're getting to 4th down? You're going to go for it anyway, the game's on the line, you're not going to kick a 64-yard field goal. Maybe you will try to kick a 64-yard field goal, and of course, it misses, and Denver loses in a spectacular fashion at Seattle in Denver's first game. So, not great for that, but a big takeaway from this game is Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, the match in targets. Maybe that gap between Sutton and Jeudy isn't as big as we thought it was going to be, and maybe you could really sustain both of them each and every week. So I do believe that it's going to be one of those things where they both kind of have an 11-point, 10-point floor, but whoever gets the touchdown is going to be the upside guy on the week. So I do believe that you can play both of them each and every week, but Sutton and Jeudy do seem to have kind of more of a match than we thought. Now, I was high on Sutton. I'm still high on Cortland Sutton, but I do believe that Jerry Jeudy has the ability to take away from him if he wants to, or if Denver and Russell Wilson lean that way. Sip time. Javonte and Melvin Gordon, they had an almost even split at 49 and 51, which is a weird kind of combination when it comes to Javonte and Melvin. We called that in the offseason. We thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be more 70-30, but it was an absolute split, and the only thing that really got Javonte up was the catches. So Javonte had 11 catches in this game, which is massive for a running back. But I still would be a little bit wary. You're going to roll Javonte out as your running back 2 every single week, no matter what. But know that those games where he doesn't get 11 catches and have those big breaks it's going to happen. So be prepared for that. On the Seattle side of the ball, Geno Smith, he got a little bit more active in passing in the second half. DK Metcalf, he went 7 for 7, but he only had 37 yards, so that was ouch. To average 5.1 yards per carry as a receiver, that's tough. But there is a reality where DK becomes slant man for Geno Smith. And if that's the case, then I really do believe that DK is going to have a lot more value going forward. So if you are the DK Metcalf owner or manager, don't be too hard on him right now. I would hang in there, and to see Geno kind of open up into the passing to the wide receivers later on in the game, it was a little bit promising. Rashad Penny, looking as the clear back over there. It is not what we hoped, especially over here, but I would still keep Penny in the running back 2 conversation, flex conversation going forward, because I am a big fan of Rashad Penny, and I do believe that he is going to have sustainable value. Kenneth Walker will be back next week, but like I said, I don't believe that that's going to be a huge thing for Rashad Penny. I still think Rashad Penny is going to be the clear lead back. Once again, Pete Carroll's super loyal to his people, so keep looking on Rashad Penny. Alrighty. Moving on into the waiver targets, and we really only got one quarterback for you this week because that's the only one that I'm willing to spend my waiver priority on. Besides that, we are going to be looking at streamers for when they hit waiver wire, hit free agency. So that's really where your quarterbacks are going to come from this week. But if Carson Wentz happens to be out there, he plays Detroit. These wide receivers on the team are really, really good. So even if Carson Wentz hurts you, this could be kind of like a Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay situation where the wide receivers are really going to keep Carson Wentz up. And if he's tossing 4 touchdowns, then I'm willing to take a chance on him, especially if I'm really desperate at quarterback. Maybe I just lost Dak or something like that. So if I have a mid-range waiver, I'm willing to spend it on Carson Wentz. That way I can have that kind of sustainability going into week 2. But there is a few quarterbacks on the waiver wire that will hit free agency that you can take your chance on. I personally would probably reach up to get Carson Wentz just so I don't have to play that carousel in the morning. Moving on to wide receiver waiver targets, and we got quite a bit. Our first one, and probably most important one that I like the most, is Curtis Samuel, playing for the Commanders with the aforementioned Carson Wentz. And the reason I love Curtis Samuel so much is because he led the team in targets with 11, and now that is absurd. Curtis Samuel, a very good wide receiver. Nice to see him back. I think he got the first touchdown of the year on Sunday. The first Sunday football touchdown of the year. So good for Curtis Samuel. Good for the chemistry with him and Carson Wentz. To see 11 targets, it seems like he's going to go to him a lot. Terry McLaurin only had 4 targets in this game, so if you are the Terry McLaurin manager, I'd be a little bit skeptical, but at the same exact time, Curtis Samuel on waiver wire, you absolutely have to go get him because I do believe that this is going to be something that you see every single week, and his floor is probably going to be around that 5 target mark. So I do like Curtis Samuel as a waiver wire grab for this week. My next one up is Devin Duvernay, which should be obvious because Devin Duvernay does look like he has the chance to be the number 1 wide receiver in Baltimore, and I am also including Mark Andrews in that statement. So I do believe that Devin Duvernay, if he is on your waiver wire, should be right behind Curtis Samuel I really think that he's going to be that guy. The only reason I think Curtis Samuel is above it is because I think the targets for Curtis Samuel are going to remain high. So Devin Duvernay, I don't believe he's going to get that 11 target kind of consistency, that 10 target kind of consistency, but his upside to be Lamar Jackson's number 1, I do like that a lot. And with the way Lamar was throwing, he looked absolutely automatic. I love the way that Lamar looked. So looking at Devin Duvernay for that, I like that. Next up, we got Donovan's People-Jones for Cleveland with the same exact target argument. He gets to play the Jets next week, and Jacoby Brissett targeted him a whopping 11 times. So Amari Cooper, not really the wide receiver 1 for that team last week. And I do believe that Donovan People-Jones with that Jacoby Brissett, he could kind of be that guy who gets high up there in targets. Obviously, you're grabbing at waivers, so you still have maybe a wide receiver 1 or 2. You're looking for a wide receiver 3 or a flex. And I think Donovan People-Jones could fit in nicely this week there against the Jets. Sit down. Moving on to the last wide receiver I have for you, and that is Robbie Anderson. Now, Robbie Anderson does have a chance to become Baker Mayfield's number 1 target. Now, I know if you take away his deep bomb touchdown, then Robbie Anderson's week wasn't that great. But to see Robbie Anderson and Baker Mayfield kind of have that chemistry, like they're kind of the boys on the team, DJ Moore kind of disappeared, it really does give me the inclination that maybe Robbie Anderson is going to be the de facto number one for this team and for Baker Mayfield. And if that's the case, then I am risk adverse and I will take the safety of volume just to have him on my team and kind of stash him there. So Robbie Anderson, I think he's a good spot start and somebody that you could hang on for the future. Now, moving on to running backs, and this is my number one waiver ad across all positions, the one player that I think you absolutely have to go out and get, especially if you're hurting at running back, and that is Jeff Wilson. He will slot in as the number one running back for the San Francisco 49ers. I do think that Tyvon Davis-Price is worth a look if you're in a deeper league, or the next morning when free agency clears, just in case he gets some work, because I don't think it'll be all Jeff Wilson. I think they're going to kind of, move in Davis-Price a little bit, but I do believe that Jeff Wilson is far and away the number one grab that you need to grab because he is going to get the benefit of Elijah. That's a weird way to say that. He is going to be the guy now that Elijah Mitchell is out. So I think that Jeff Wilson, especially, he had big games or a couple big games last year, so I do believe that Jeff Wilson is somebody that you absolutely have to go out and grab. Next up, we got Rex Burkhead, and I know it's gross. I know you don't like it, but the volume was there. He had a whopping 8 targets last week, and if you're getting 8 targets as a running back, then I am very, very interested. He also had 14 carries, so he was the clear number one back. So as much as we want it to be Dameon Pierce, a lot of people asking if they should drop Dameon Pierce. I would not drop Dameon Pierce. I would hang on to Dameon Pierce. But I would look at Rex Burkhead as somebody that is going to steal volume, he's going to steal targets, and he's probably going to be the number one guy over there. He's probably going to have some consistency and a pretty good floor. So as gross as it is, you can go ahead and grab Rex Burkhead. He is probably going to be one of those players that in some leagues, if there's nobody really clawing for running back, they might grab Jeff Wilson. They might grab the next guy that we're going to talk about, Dontrell Hilliard. So Rex Burkhead might even slip into free agency, but I do believe that he is somebody that you can roster without feeling like you are going to get absolutely nothing out of him. You should have a floor of like 8 points in full PPR, and it's not going to sink you. You're not going to love it, but at least it's there, and you can kind of count on that to be there. The next guy that we're going to talk about is Dontrell Hilliard, like I mentioned, and this one I do believe is for the massive handcuff upside, because if something were to happen to Derrick Henry, God forbid, knock on wood, Dontrell Hilliard will get the bulk of the work. Now, Dontrell Hilliard only had a 14 snap percentage on the week, but he got the 2 touchdowns. Now, I do believe that they are going to use this Dontrell Hilliard red zone a little bit more than they have in the past when they just ran Derrick Henry a bunch of times. So I do think that you're going to see Dontrell Hilliard a little bit more than you want to. But this for me is a handcuff ad where if he is out there, I do want to stash him on my bench, because if there's a chance that Derrick Henry does go down, knock on wood, please no, then Dontrell Hilliard is going to be a massive appeal in fantasy and one that I can't really pass up. Moving on to tight end, the last 2 waiver targets for the week, or for the day and for the week. And we are talking about tight end Taysom Hill. And now I know this isn't one of the glamorous names. A lot of people are looking at Gerald Everett, which we'll talk about in a second. But I believe that Taysom Hill, especially if he has some quarterback upside, they play him in the Wildcat. I don't think that with Taysom Hill, you're only going to see him in those red zone formations. I do believe the Saints are going to use him a lot more, and we have seen that. He lined up at tight end, he lined up at quarterback, and then he ran it. But these are gadget plays that they are going to use Taysom Hill in at a lot. You're going to see him probably 20% snap share on the week when it comes to that red zone. You're going to see him a lot more because he is effective. So I do believe that with Jameis Winston, the combination of him and Taysom Hill, to have somebody like Taysom Hill in your tight end slot and he's playing quarterback, running gadget plays in the red zone for touchdowns like that, there's really not much else besides a high-end tight end where you can expect volume that's really going to lead to something promising. So you can look at a Gerald Everett or a Hayden Hurst, like we're going to talk about in a second, and those players are going to give you maybe 3-4 catches for a touchdown, but Taysom Hill's upside at a touchdown is so much more than them. So I know that the snap percentage isn't there, and that tends to be something to scare me away more. I want them on the field running routes. I want them, with the high chance of a touchdown in comparison to not being on the field and just being used in certain situations. But Taysom Hill is really outside of that realm when it comes to us talking about that, I need that consistency. Taysom Hill's consistency isn't there, but his upside is so much higher than everybody else's. Just like Dontrell Hilliard, when it comes to him being in the red zone, he's going to have that high upside compared to all the other backups, all the Alexander Madison, stuff like that. Because he's going to have plays that are designed just for him. So that really is my argument for Taysom Hill. I do believe that he is my number one tight end add this week if I wanted to. A lot of people asking me about Robert Tonyan. He was quite rostered. His roster percentage was quite high, so I didn't include him in there, but I do like Robert Tonyan. When Allen Lazard comes back, I think you're going to see a lot more Robert Tonyan coming forward. So I didn't put him on here, but that's because I thought he was generally, owned in most leagues or rostered in most leagues. Another name that I'll throw in there is Darrell Henderson. Some people were asking me, do I drop Cam Akers for Darrell Henderson? That's a tough one. I personally don't think you should drop Cam Akers yet. But if you need a running back start right now this week because you had Cam Akers and you have nothing else to drop on your bench, which I'm sure you do. I'm sure you have another wide receiver that you can drop to get somebody like Darrell Henderson if he's out there, which he shouldn't be, but if he is out there, he should be on your team. But you really have to give me something great in order for me to drop Cam Akers. Would I drop Cam Akers to get Jeff Wilson? Probably, but that's probably the only name on this whole list that I would drop Cam Akers for. I want to wait and see. I don't think that it's completely useless to have Cam Akers, so I want to wait and see on that. But yeah, let's get back into tight ends. Taysom Hill is my number one tight end ad. My next one would be Gerald Everett. I do believe that he has a lot of upside going forward, especially in an offense that moved the ball around so much to 9 different receivers. A lot of panic on Mike Williams. I wouldn't panic on Mike Williams. But the way they move the ball around in this game, it's really difficult for me to panic on Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, any of those guys. I got some Austin Eckler questions where they're like, do I trade Austin Eckler? No way. No way. His volume was probably the lowest it'll be for the next 6 weeks or so. He's going to be more involved, so don't look at anybody on the Chargers like that. Hang tight. Keep playing them. Mike Williams, if you want to entertain a trade so you don't have to chase the points, I get it. I don't want to be chasing Mike Williams all year either. But he is still a high-value, wide receiver in a high-value offense. Keenan Allen's going to miss this week. So for me personally, I'm not getting rid of these players, but if I can find a decent enough trade where somebody wants them or is willing to pay close to their value, then I will. So Gerald Everett, he fits into the conversation of somebody that I'm not that down on this week, and I do believe will have more opportunity going forward. So with him being there, I do like Gerald Everett having the connection or having some connection with Justin Herbert and kind of moving forward with those guys. I do like it, so I would go out there, try to get a piece of that Chargers offense, especially when they're going to start heating up. They're not going to be, that close to the Las Vegas Raiders. They're going to be much, much better. They're going to have games where they blow out teams. So once they really start going, that's where I'm excited for Gerald Everett. My next one would be Hayden Hurst, which I am a big fan of Hayden Hurst going into this week. I really like the fact that Hayden Hurst has the potential to really fill some spots if T. Higgins were to miss time. But we did see a little bit of involvement. We saw some red zone work with Hayden Hurst, so that's what got me excited. Because if you're seeing those red zone opportunities like CJ Uzomah had with Joe Burrow, then I do believe that Hayden Hurst is going to have those. And we saw it. We saw the opportunities in the red zone. We saw the targets. That's what's promising to me, so I definitely would go out of my way to look for that. Now, let's talk about some free agent targets for tomorrow. I already mentioned a couple that you could look for during the waiver section, but let's get into a couple that I do like that not a lot of people are talking about. My first one is Russell Gage. Now, I know that his snap count was, I think it was around 70%, so it really wasn't that high, even with Godwin out the whole game. But I do believe that Russell Gage being somebody that Tom Brady handpicked over there, you're going to see him come in. He could be the slot guy. You have Julio Jones on the outside. Julio Jones is going to be involved. But I do believe that Russell Gage, from what we've seen, from what we saw in the game after Chris Godwin left, Russell Gage is going to have some involvement. Tom Brady's handpicking this guy. Russell Gage has the talent. He was one of my favorite guys on Atlanta. I grabbed him in Dynasty League like 2 years ago because I just absolutely loved his talent. So I like the opportunity for Russell Gage to see some opportunity in this offense with a player like Tom Brady. So very excited for Russell Gage. Basically, if you didn't have Tom Brady, I wouldn't be having this in the section. But if he clears tomorrow and you're really hurting at wide receiver, your Curtis Samuels are gone, then I would take a look at him. Now, my other one, this is kind of a deeper reach, and not a lot of people like it, and I understand why not a lot of people like it. I get why, you get to a point where you're looking at these players and you're going, okay, I need to have something that I can be sure in. This one isn't going to look too sure, but I won't be surprised if and when it happens, and that is Josh Palmer. Now, Josh Palmer for the LA Chargers, he played the snap over DeAndre Carter. So DeAndre Carter got the touchdowns. He got the, 3 receptions for 4 targets, something like that. He finished as the best wide receiver on the week for the team, so everybody's looking at DeAndre Carter. Now, if somebody in your league goes out and spends a draft pick or a waiver pick on DeAndre Carter, right, you can go ahead and grab Josh Palmer, and I think that you're going to have the player that you'd rather want off the waiver wire. Josh Palmer played a 75% snap share, and we've seen that he has a better connection with Justin Herbert. DeAndre Carter was just right place, right time. So I'm really not putting that much into DeAndre Carter. I really think it's going to be Josh Palmer if it's not Mike Williams next week. So Josh Palmer will clear to tomorrow morning. People are going to spend their waiver priority on DeAndre Carter, and you get to laugh and say, that's not the right one. You should have picked this one, and you get to grab him for free tomorrow morning. So I love Josh Palmer. Moving on to some trade targets, which is our last section of the night. Now, if you guys have any comments, should I drop, should I grab, blah, 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 make sure to drop those in the comments, obviously, and all that stuff. I'll make sure I always get to those. I always answer my YouTube questions. TikTok questions are a little bit hard to get to because the notifications are always kind of sporadic and difficult to get through. So I always answer my YouTube. TikTok's a little bit harder. The trade targets we're going to talk about, my number 1 trade target is the aforementioned Mike Williams. Now, if anybody is really looking at Mike Williams, it kind of seems like we do this every single year. If you're looking down your nose at Mike Williams, I would say at any point in time, if you can grab Mike Williams for low, then I would absolutely do it. I'm not saying that you trade a wide receiver 1 to go get him or a wide receiver 2 to go get him because you absolutely have to have him. But if you can trade a DJ Moore and a lower end, if you can trade a DJ Moore and a lower end running back, I'm trying to think of one, I can't think of one right now, to get Mike Williams, then I absolutely would. If you have, I'm trying to think, it's tough, I'm got a million names in my head. I don't know, if you have Josh Jacobs and a smaller wide receiver that you're really not too, maybe, I'd probably trade Josh Jacobs and DJ Moore for Mike Williams depending on how my roster is, but still, even then. So it's difficult to make up, especially with not a roster in front of me, of rankings in front of me. But I definitely would look at Mike Williams as a trade target. Also, CeeDee Lamb. If anybody is panicking, actually, I'll put CeeDee Lamb and Zeke together. If anybody is panicking on CeeDee Lamb or Zeke after this game and they're willing to trade them for cheap because Dak's now gone and they think that's just absolute shambles, then I absolutely would go out and grab these players because I do think that they're high capital players and Dak is going to be back at some point. So when it becomes playoff time, when it becomes playoff push time, you'll have Dak with CeeDee. Michael Gallup will be back. The team will look a lot better. So if you can grab CeeDee now for a cheap, buy, or a Zeke now for a cheap buy and have them later, I absolutely would. If somebody drops Pollard in your league, which I got a lot of Pollard questions, don't drop Pollard. But if somebody drops Pollard in your league tomorrow, go get them. Another name that I saw drop that I thought should not have happened, Brandon Ayuk. If anybody drops Brandon Ayuk, go get Brandon Ayuk. Somebody dropped Treylon Burks. If somebody drops Treylon Burks, go get Treylon Burks. So make sure you're watching out for those players that get dropped because players will get dropped that should not. Another trade target for me is Travis Etienne. Now, he had a bad week 1, but his snap percentage was identical just about to James Robinson. So you see the James Robinson week, he scores 19-something, you're like, oh, well, that's it, no Travis Etienne. But Travis Etienne was on the field, and he saw more targets than James Robinson. So that's very promising. Trevor Lawrence missed Travis Etienne 2 times in the end zone, 2 times. So when they go back and watch that footage, I think you're going to see a lot of Travis Etienne red zone work. I think you're going to see a lot of passes going Travis Etienne's way. And I think that this team is going to work a lot on the back of Travis Etienne, James Robinson, and Christian Kirk. So Christian Kirk, another trade name that you can go out and get. I think he had 17 targets this week. Absolutely wild. So if you can somehow get DJ Shark, I think that he is another trade target that I would look at. And my last one is Allen Robinson. This is probably one that you can get for a steal because Allen Robinson put up a very, very abysmal game for players who drafted him in probably, I think it was like the 7th or 8th round, might even been the 6th. No, it wasn't that high. Yeah, it was probably like 7 through 9 where Allen Robinson went. So if anybody in your league is down on Allen Robinson, they're like, oh, well, I blew a draft pick on that. Sean McVay said that he is going to get him more involved, and I do believe that he is going to get him more involved. So I expect to see some Allen Robinson coming up soon. I'm very excited to see what Allen Robinson can do. I do believe he is the bona fide number 2 on there. And when you watch the game footage, Allen Robinson was running pretty good routes. Matt Stafford was just in shambles that game. He was just getting rocked that game. So going back and watching that film, I was like, wow, Matt, you don't look good this week. You guys really took some extra weeks to party this season, off season, for the Super Bowl win. So that is it for our show. If you guys have any questions, waivers, follow me on TikTok, all that good stuff. Drop your questions below. Oh, and if you guys don't know, this is Taysom Hill up in my little corner hiding. So if you saw him on the thumbnail and you didn't know who it was, that's Taysom Hill just peeking in to say hi. So, alrighty, everybody. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me at Fantasy Daily. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow me on TikTok, Instagram, all that good stuff, all the stuff that popped up at the beginning. Send to your friends, blah, 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 all that.